Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson and looking forward to today's show as we reflect on some great racing last weekend in our news of the week, but importantly, we switch our attention to what should be a fantastic week of racing. We've got plenty of big races coming up, including feature meetings on Saturday and Sunday from the Curragh. We've also got a good card of racing coming from Haydock in the UK as well as York. And importantly, we'll have the tips of the week with the two gentlemen who join me now, Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley. Guys, great to catch up. And certainly, Stephen, there was plenty of high-quality action last weekend, but we could be in a bit of trouble this weekend because there's a fair amount of rain hitting the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, it looks pretty desperate, Shane, actually. I just saw the chap from the Curragh doing his going report, which they're very good at. And that sounds like it's going to be heavy, really bad ground. It's going to be on, obviously, but it's not really ideal for, we're nearly into June now. Things should be on good, fast ground, and it's still heavy ground slugfest. And it does look like that's going to be the case at Haydock, which is a track that does get very testing very quickly, mainly due to overwatering in the past. But that's going to be soft ground as well by the looks. So it is difficult for punters. I think you're a lot of the time better holding fire and waiting rather than getting too involved.
Ed, as a welcome you to the program, that is a very good point, I think, that Stephen raises. We're doing the show here on Thursday for predominantly talking about racing on Saturday and Sunday. And when you've got so much wet weather forecast, we could see a whole different scenario come the weekend compared to what we're dealing with today.
Yeah, absolutely. We always tend to be talking about the weather on this show, don't we? And it's been the case with a few of our tips that we've pretty much gone through the form and thought, we could get away a bit of good ground. And by the time the races come along on a Sunday morning, whatever, it's soft to heavy. Look, that's just the nature of the beast, really. But yeah, the overall impression, looking at weather forecasts at the Curragh and in the north of England especially, it's going to be a minimum of soft ground, you'd have thought, for those types of meetings. You have plenty of rain around, and so do bear that in mind when going through the form. You pretty much want to angle in towards soft ground specialists, I would say.
All right, guys, let's get into the news of the week. And I think we'll start with a reflection of last weekend because we had such important racing, including the next round of the classic races with the French 2,000 guineas and also 1,000 guineas at Longchamp. Stephen, we'll start with the 2,000 guineas. Aidan O'Brien's St Mark's Basilica was impressive, at least visually, in taking out the race. But it was a race that was significantly slower than what the fillies 1,000 guineas race was. Are you reading much into that?
Well, I was very impressed with it. When you read afterwards on Twitter, I know all the time men were very cynical. It was a slow run crawl, but watching it live and then watching it again afterwards, I thought it was a really impressive performance. Okay, it was slow run and muddling as so many races in France are in the early stages, but really quickened up smartly. And I thought one with plenty in hand. So although perhaps comparatively the time was slow with other races on the card, I thought it was a brilliant performance, and I think this one now goes to Royal Ascot and is likely to start quite a short price favourite, whatever race they target for.
Stephen, though, to your eye, has he improved considerably from what you saw at 2 to 3, or is he just holding his mark and the others haven't improved either?
No, I did think he had improved quite dramatically. I mean, O'Brien's a genius with these horses. He keeps eking out more and more and more. And generally speaking, a lot of O'Briens have been needing the run first time. So extra credit there as well. So I wouldn't underestimate this one with regards to Royal Ascot at all. And I suspect better ground, if it ever stops raining, Shane, better ground at Royal Ascot would definitely suit him.
What did you make of the fillies race, Stephen? Did you think that it was an upset result with the favourite Mother Earth being beaten, of course, as she attempted to win the 1,000 guineas double from Newmarket through to Longchamp? But do you think that the depth of that fillies division is strong?
I don't think it's wonderful, Shane. It was a bit of a messy race. The spread across the track, there was a little bit of trouble in running. I wouldn't draw too many firm conclusions from that. Again, I think you'll see a lot of them in a better light on much faster ground in the summer.
All right, Ed, what are your views of St Mark's Basilica and also Cassamba, the winner of the 1,000 guineas? Do you think they're much chop?
Yes, interesting points, isn't it, Shane? Yeah, Cassamba caused him, was it 60-61 SP, I believe, with Mother Earth in second. Again, a bit of a race, I'll take it for picture salt. We actually joked, kind of semi-joked, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, saying Mother Earth would probably be the type of individual that wins the the 1,000 Guineas at Newmarket, then doesn't win again before being retired. And she could end up being that type of filly, really. I'm finding it hard to put kind of cast iron assertions of the form lines of those 1 mile fillies at the moment, I have to be said. Going across to the Colts, I think St. Mark's Basilica did look very impressive. Yes, the stopwatch celebrities, as I call them, were forced to say, didn't do this between the 3rd and 4th furlong split, and the wind was coming this direction. Look, the horse bolted up, looked really good. By all accounts, probably needed the run after an absence, and clearly retains a lot of ability. I actually thought Poetic Flair, the 2,000 Guineas winner for Newmarket, actually ran a very good race, considering he got absolutely trapped behind a wall of horses on very soft ground, and to his credit did knuckle down and stay on well at the end. I believe they're going to roll the dice and run him in the Irish 2,000 as well. I mean, this this horse is out every week, it would appear. But St. Mark's Basilica was the deserving winner, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he could prove again from that heading into Royal Ascot.
Ed, let's switch our attention now to Newbury, and we saw some outstanding races on the card, probably none better than Palace Pier's demolition job in the Lockinge Stakes Group 1 level. I think you can safely say he's the number 1 seed in the miler division in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a terrific turn of foot, wasn't it, to put the race to bed at the 2 furlong pole. One with plenty in hand. Lady Beauthorpe ran really well for connections in behind. But yeah, Palace Pier, the dominant performer in this scene at the moment. Very interesting to listen to John Gosden in the aftermath of this interview. Said they will have a crack at 10 furlongs at some point. He's pretty much penciled in the Juddmonte International at York as the first time they try it, to see if that will then open up perhaps avenues into the likes of Champion Stakes, or where they go, or whether they know they've just got an out-and-out miler on their hands. So he was very impressive. Now Arzi was very impressive as well. Seeing off your friend Logician, has to be said. Seriously impressive performance from that individual. I mean, hard on the bridle. Okay, you can argue Logician's not the force of old, and a couple of those in behind underperformed, but they were not mugs. They were very good group horses, and he absolutely cantered all over them. So exciting prospect going further forward, as much as William Haggis wanted to kind of play down his chances for the rest of the season.
Stephen, I think John Gosden, who historically is always armed with some outstanding talent each and every year, but this year, with what he's done with Mishriff so far in the season, winning some of the major races in the early part of the year, now with Palace Pier emerging, plus a plethora of outstanding 3-year-olds, it could be a record-breaking season for Gosden.
Yeah, I mean, he's a brilliant trainer, isn't he? He's obviously got Tady on side as well now, and he seems to have landed running. It looks like he's sort of been made for the role all his life. I mean, Palace Pier, 7 out of 8, 1 defeat, which came on really soft ground. That might be the only chink in his armour. But I'll tell you something about Gosden. They interviewed, I think, Dettori after the race, and they were sort of saying, what did Gosden say to you before, blah, blah, blah. And Gosden said, whatever you do, get over onto the stands rail, because the ground's a lot better over there. And that is incredible thing for only him to know that. And Dettori came over it, and from being sort of 5 or 6 lengths off the pace, he was level in about half a furlong. And I think he was surprised. The horse then idled in front. I think he does have the odd quirk, but all the best horses do. I mean, he looks the best in the world. I think he's going for the Queen Anne at Royal Ascot on the opening day, and he'll be a real banker. I mean, you think for him to get beat, he might need soft ground again, would be the only chink in his armour, really. He looks a class above everything over a mile. Al-Azi, I suspect. I mean, I thought Al-Azi was a real good thing on form. I think perhaps when you look back at the race, Shane, you might think that it wasn't that strong a race. But having said that, he'd won turning for home. He was cruising all over them. I mean, he had stones in hand. He could develop into being an art contender because, as we know, that race tends to be on soft ground. He handles soft ground really well. Haggis absolutely loves him. He says he's heading to the Coronation Cup at Epsom, and he thinks he'll love Epsom, which is a brave thing to say. He's got great balance. He's another one. He's just got it all. He looks a real superstar.
Question on Logician. I was quite confident about him going into the race, and, well, I got it wrong. But do you feel that he can play a part in any of these middle distance or staying races this season, or is he perhaps not as good as what we'd hoped, Stephen, after his 3-year-old career when he won at St Ledger?
Well, he won his first 6, Shane, didn't he? And he was really disappointing at York in October. I mean, he was strong enough in the market at Newbury. He just looks a big sort of galloping boat. Maybe he's going to need, maybe he could be a 2-miler. I mean, he looks like a hurdler on looks, but he was under pressure quite a long way out, and it was pretty laboured stuff. I mean, Al-Azi could be top class, so perhaps we're being harsh, but he just has the look, Logician, unless he's going to stay a mile 6 or 2 miles, and they're going to go that route, which they could do. He's won over a mile 7 before, of course. He looks like a hurdler to me. Wouldn't it be lovely if they aimed him at Cheltenham and sent him to Dan Skelton or something like that?
You're looking for your long-range anti-post bet for Cheltenham already, and you're trying to convert Logician. I like it.
Yeah.
Ed, let's touch on Royal Ascot, because you've both mentioned Royal Ascot already in the conversation. All of the entries or the nominations for the big races for Royal Ascot are out now. Where do you see things playing out? Are there any horses that are sort of saying to you, hey, back me in early anti-post markets, or are you still wanting to wait a little bit longer and see what transpires?
Yeah, generally speaking, Shane likes to wait a bit longer, but there's one gone into the notebook and one I have backed actually after recent action. The one that's gone into the notebook was Art Power. Of course, he ran in the sprint run by Starman at the weekend. Yes, Starman rightfully took all the plaudits on the back of an impressive success, but better paddock judges than myself informed me they thought Art Power was carrying plenty of condition. He was far too keen, far too buzzy, and he just looked like a ring rusty individual who come on a lot for the seasonal reappearance, if you like. So he's one I'd have half an eye on at double figure price for the Jubilee at Ascot, given he's been to Ascot twice, once at Royal Ascot last year when he absolutely bolted up, admittedly in a handicap off a lowly mark. And on his only ever occasion at track, he was beaten just less than a length in a Group 1. If he can get some soft ground, which is not inconceivable given the weather at the moment, I think he could, how should we say, narrow the gap significantly with Starman back at that track. The one I have back, though, is Santiago, who was my tip last week. Finished runner-up, didn't he, in the Yorkshire Cup. He's going to go to the Ascot Gold Cup, it sounds like. I think he could run a really big race in that. All it confirmed to me at the weekend was he just looked tap for toe and he looks a thorough stayer. Let's not forget, he won at Royal Ascot over 2 miles in the Vars last year, and he does enjoy soft ground. I think the ground probably just went a bit against him at York. It was pretty much the driest of the week by the time he came to race on it. So if we got a bit of cut in the ground, he was beaten length of 3/4 by Stradivarius in the Goodwood Cup last season. I think with soft ground Royal Ascot, he's 16-1. I think he's far from a forlorn each way hope, shall we say, in that showpiece event.
It certainly makes a lot of sense at that price too, particularly with Aidan O'Brien having such a phenomenal record in the Gold Cup. Stephen, what about from your perspective? Is anything sort of standing out that you want to have an early bet on coming to Royal Ascot?
Well, I think that Starman, who won the Duke of York, the race Ed's touched on, I thought that was a really devastatingly impressive performance. They interviewed Ed Walker afterwards, and he says that he was really worried about the cut in the ground at York, although it had dried out by the time this race was off. He has run disappointing on soft ground in the past. This was a really proper display. They were well clear of Oxted, who I think is going for the King's Stand now. He could be an interesting runner at Ascot. He could be the forgotten horse. He's been an expensive failure twice, but Roger Teal doesn't think he's got him right. And he says he always takes till sort of June, the summer months, to come to himself. So if they get fast ground at Ascot for the King's Stand, Oxted could be interesting at a double figure price. But Starman, for me, I think goes for the Diamond Jubilee Stakes. That's the target, though he is in the other sprint, and he'll be extremely hard to beat. I take Ed's point about Art Power. I thought it was a poor ride on that one from D'Souza. He pulled very hard in the early stages, never landed a blow. So you could see that one in a different light on another day for sure.
Should just give a reminder too that we will be streaming Jump to It live on each of the days of Royal Ascot this year. Really looking forward to that in the mornings of each of the days racing. Should just briefly mention too, sad news coming from the UK over the past couple of days with legendary jockey Joe Mercer passing away aged 86, of course well known as the rider of the champion Brigadier Gerard in the early 1970s. He was a phenomenal rider, won many feature races, and he'll be sorely missed. And guys, also a bit of news coming from the United States. We talked about this probably a fair bit over the past few weeks, as you would expect. Bob Baffert, arguably the biggest training name in US racing. Well, his Kentucky Derby winner Medina Spirit, we're still waiting the fallout as to whether or not there will be a positive or second positive, which will mean he'll lose the Kentucky Derby. But I should say, Ed, baffling situation. The Derby winner was allowed to run in the Preakness Stakes, the second leg of the Triple Crown. He was then beaten in that race, and now the New York Racing Association have banned Bob Baffert and any of his runners from competing at their meeting, which includes the Belmont Stakes meeting, the third leg of the Triple Crown. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking if the Triple Crown was still alive with Medina Spirit, we might just see the horse lining up to take his place in racing history, but they've made this decision and he's been banned.
Yeah, absolutely. We touched upon this, didn't we, on last week's show, went into quite a bit of detail. Seems to be a right old farce. There seem to be all sorts of different, more storylines than EastEnders being spun out from the Bob Baffert team about how the banned substance got to the horse. I mean, I believe it's to do with a skin treatment, and then the vet didn't read the label properly, and then there was issues with the hay perhaps as well. And it was a bizarre set of circumstances where I think, again, we touched upon it was almost like Bob Baffert was leading his own investigation into potentially his own ban. In the end, the New York racetracks have said enough is enough, haven't they? And he suspended for the foreseeable waiting and pending the result of that second sample, which is all important in regards to what comes back from that for the future. Perhaps Bob Baffert and Medine Spirit. But the final point on Bob Baffert, clearly fantastic trainer, but I mean, was this the 31st violation of a similar type in recent times? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And I mean, the cynical side of me when you start saying, the vet didn't read the label properly. I mean, really, come on. The vet assigned to Bob Baffert's equine operation isn't going to be some college student doing a case study on a chicken run. They're going to be serious vets, serious methodology, pay incredible attention to the detail they do. Yes, we all make mistakes, but there's something just a bit smelly about the whole situation that has to be said.
Stephen, I've got to go back a bit too. I did forget to mention a little bit earlier in our conversation this situation regarding jockey Jason Watson this week in the UK. On Tuesday, he's been given a 7-day ban by the British Horse Racing Authority stewards for a ride on a 2-year-old where basically the horse, which was Noisy Night, missed the start, put itself out of contention, but Jason didn't put the horse or even attempt to try and get the horse back into the race, and he said he didn't want to put the horse under undue stress from a welfare perspective. What's your overall assessment of this situation? Have the BHA done the right thing in suspending him, or is this an overreaction?
I think within the rules, they probably had to do something, but the rules should allow for common sense. I mean, this was absolutely ridiculous. It's got to be 1.01 to get turned over on appeal. It was a green 2-year-old, unbacked, first time out, fell out the stalls, lost all chance. What would be the point in getting the whip out for him to come 11th rather than wherever? He was falling out the back of the television. He had no chance of being in the first 10, whatever Jason Watson did. That's the main fact. This is what the stewards keep getting wrong. There is no consistency at all, Shane. I watch racing 7 days a week, all the low-grade racing. I could have a list of 10 horses every day. I'm not saying they've been laid, but they certainly haven't been ridden to maximum effect, whether that's error or something more sinister or they're waiting for another day. It's not difficult. And they're the horses that punters are concerned about, not green 2-year-olds who fall out the stalls, lose all chance immediately, and then don't get driven along to finish 15th out the back of the television. I mean, there's just no common sense. There needs to be centralised stewarding. So it's one panel of a rotation of 10 people sitting in London, watching every race from every angle and making consistent decisions. This is an absolute certainty to get overturned if anybody with any sense, shred of common sense is involved in the final process. He's quite right to appeal. I mean, I suspect the 7 days might become 1 or 2, something like that. They'll reduce it, but it's ridiculous. And I'm a sort of Priti Patel when it comes to crime and punishment, Shane. I think there should be much stricter penalties on non-triers and blatant acts of where the public are being cheated. But this is clearly not one of those occasions.
Oh, strong stance there by Stephen Harris. Ed, are you aligned in your thinking there, whether you're as right wing in that approach as what Stephen was? But I think he raises a very good point, though, when we talk about perhaps a centralised integrity division that can oversee, in a modern day where we've got so much technology available, whether we have a centralised integrity group, a stewarding group that can manage all of the different racecourse operations.
Yeah, it would make sense, wouldn't it? I mean, it seems to be something I've been discussing on various shows about the last decade, and it always kind of the idea gets bandied about, but never seems to go anywhere. But I do think Stephen's summed it up very well, and I've actually got a lot of sympathy with the stewards in this particular scenario because, as Stephen says, there's the rules and there's common sense, and unfortunately they don't dovetail on a lot of occasions, and this is one where they almost should, because Jason Watson, he's gone into the stewards and he has said, he's quoted, he didn't put any form of pressure on Noisy Night to improve at any stage. Well, once he's admitted that, he's then said it's an automatic case of failing to take all reasonable and permissible measures throughout the race to improve the horse's position. So once he's broken the rule, well, where else can the stewards actually go, if you know what I'm saying? They're almost handcuffed in order to give the punishment of 7 days, which is the minimum ban for that type of offence. As Stephen says, I think we all agree what it really needs is like everyone say, like, come here a minute. Let's use our nous here. Unraced 2-year-old falling out the stalls. Yes, okay. You could have thrown the kitchen sink at the horse to get him to finish 10th or whatever. What good would that have really done in the cold light of day? Okay, but next time, let's just at least try and see a little bit more. If this happens again, all right, cheers, on you go. The problem is if you then start kind of making excuses for every rule, then what's the point in having the rule in the first place? So I do think it's a bit of a chicken in or egg here. I think the rule's probably a bit stupid, and there does need to be an independent body in place every time, every race, where, hang on a minute, that could be overruled. This wasn't a non-trial. This wasn't deceit of the public. This was an unraced 2-year-old who just didn't know his job. And Jason Watson has been given a 7-day ban, which I think is fair given the criteria that are in place at the moment. I'm not saying I agree with the criteria, but I think it's a case of where you just say that the stewards are handcuffed, the BHA are handcuffed to some extent. So, yeah, I think he'll get it quashed because there needs to be some kind of overruling common sense body. But as they say, Shane, the thing with common sense is it's not very common.
Very good point. Let's have a look at the upcoming races for this weekend. And the classic round of racing comes up again this weekend, with the attention being on Ireland and, of course, at the Curragh for a 2-day card, Saturday into Sunday. And, guys, let's have a look at the 2,000 guineas, the Group 1 contest for the 3-year-old colts at the Curragh on Saturday, and it's certainly a fantastic field taking place. Agrimony, an outsider for Aidan O'Brien and the Ballydoyle team. Battleground, though, certainly well in the market. Emporio's also in the race. La Barossa's given a chance by many for Charlie Appleby and Godolphin. Lucky Vega's another one with a chance. McSweeney is also taking his place in the race for Jim Bolger. Good reports about him too. Monasib could be a good each-way prospect. Very nice first-up run. Poetic Flair trying to win his second guineas. And, of course, backing up after last weekend in France. Rebel Step, the Rastafarians, another one in the race with Van Gogh and also Wembley. All right, Stephen, as we have a look at the 2,000 guineas meeting, Aidan O'Brien, as to be expected, has loaded up his arsenal there, but also Jim Bolger with a couple of key contenders. It should be a fascinating race.
Yeah, I think it's a race we'll learn plenty from, Shane. I'm expecting heavy ground, having listened to the Clark talking about the weather forecast. So a lot of them have got lots to prove on testing ground. La Barossa, you touched on. Well, he's run once on heavy ground at St Cloud and was falling out at the back of the television. So that must be a huge doubt about the conditions for him. I do think that Lucky Vega of Jessica Harrington sets the standard on form, ran really well in the 2,000 guineas. Now, that race might not have been the greatest. I know that Master of the Seas has been ruled out through injury now for some months, I believe. Whether or not it was the best race ever, but the fitness that Lucky Vega would have picked up from that first run of the season, plus the proven stamina now for a mile, should count for plenty. Now, Jessica Harrington has said, ideally, she wouldn't have wanted really testing ground, but they were worried about fast ground at Newmarket, so she's going to run it anyway. And the winner, it did win the Temple Stakes last season, and that was softer than the official, but whether you really want heavy ground. I mean, this has the look of a punting minefield, Shane, to be honest with you. Horses, we don't know whether they've trained on, whether they're 100% fit. A lot of them have never run on heavy ground and probably don't want it. It looks a watching brief for me, to be honest.
Yes, I tend to agree with you there. And Ed, as I bring you into the conversation, so many baffling scenarios to work our way through. Aidan O'Brien's horses that ran in the 2,000 guineas at Newmarket, we'll put it bluntly, they were putrid. We've got the situation of Poetic Flair on a quick backup from France into Ireland. We've got the additional wet ground. We've got McSweeney positive reports, but is he more of a Derby prospect? I mean, the list goes on. It could be one of the hardest betting races of the early part of the flat season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can make various different cases and angles for all of them, but in part, then I suppose that's why you're going to get a juicy price and get rewarded if you do find the winner. Just very quickly on the Aidan O'Brien runners, I believe Ryan Moore's sticking faithful to Wembley, or he's been told to ride Wembley again. Almost becoming a bit bizarre with this horse. I mean, he's won a maiden at 2's on, an absolute race I could have won in. Other than that, he's been beaten in every other career start. and yet for some reason he just seems to have this kind of gravitas of reputation towards him. For whatever reason, I don't quite know. Battleground I'll come on to later in the show. I actually think we'll see a much more improved effort on ground, which I think will really be up his street. So, but generally speaking, yeah, I agree with you, Shane. There's a lot of question marks to be answered, but as I said, there are some juicy prices floating around, and I think ultimately, above it all, ground conditions will be the dictator here of what really happens to these horses.
Ed, is there anything else on the strong card at the Curragh on Saturday that you're attracted to? There are a few other Group 2 races on the card, but also, I mean, pretty much throughout from start to finish, there's a fair bit of depth. I suppose it's just going to come down to how the track plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Although in the Greenland Stakes, the horse I'd circled here was Joseph O'Brien's Speaking Colours, who actually won the rearranged version of this during the pandemic last year. This horse has a remarkable record over course of distance at the Curragh. I think he's run up 7 times over course of distance, finished runner-up twice and won on 4 occasions. For whatever reason, absolutely just comes alive at this venue and has winning form on testing ground. Clearly be trained to the minute for this and is in around second favourites. I think Speaking Colours in the Greenland Stakes, which is the race before the 2,000 guineas on your cards, I think a big run can easily be expected from him.
Stephen, what about from your perspective on the remainder of the Curragh card on Saturday? Anything else jumping out for you?
Well, in the same race as Ed's put up Speaking Colours, I like Laugh a Minute, Shane. Now, this one was a really impressive winner, one run back over this trip. And if you watch that back, he got the stalls completely wrong. He skewed out the stalls and lost quite a bit of ground. And it was a pretty amazing run to get up and win. And that was on soft ground. Next time they dropped him back to 5 and he never landed a blow off another slow break on much quicker ground. So while he's up in class here, he could be a big price. Soft ground, a proper true run, 6 furlongs. I think he'll go really close.
Stephen, at Haydock on Saturday, a couple of Group 2 races, the Sandy Lane for the 3-year-olds over the sprint trip, and also the Temple Stakes, which is often a form reference for the King's Stand Stakes at Royal Ascot. Anything standing out from your perspective there?
I think the Sandy Lane is a really difficult race. I like the Lear Jet. Just at the back of my mind, pulled far too hard first run of the season. Behind Chindit, I think, shaping really nicely, should be fitter for the run. And Michael Bell has just started to warm up a bit after a very slow start. Whether or not deep, soft ground would be ideal, I think it's going to be desperate at Haydock, looking at the weather forecast, and that can be a minefield. But one of my stronger bets of the weekend we'll come to later, Shane, runs in the Temple at 10. This is a really good sprint. I think Liberty is an absolute class above these, one of the strongest bets of the weekend. Run at Haydock off a break last season over 6 furlongs, somehow, because she's very hard, and just lasted home. They then dropped her back to sprinting. She ran blinders all summer, apart from one run at Goodwood where I think she raced against a dead rail against Batash, who was 7-2 on and obviously the best sprinter in the world virtually. You can forgive that. This looks an absolutely ideal opening. And they did worry about deep ground for her, but she went to France on her final run last season in the Abbey on heavy ground and ran an absolute blinder there. So if it is heavy at Haydock, I'm not worried about that. If she settles, and the small field might not be ideal, but I do think she's a grade or 2 above these, and I think she's a really good bet at around 5-2.
All right, good push there. What about you, Ed? Is there anything at Haydock that appeals?
I've got to be honest, I'm quite reticent in regards to Haydock. I actually thought Keep Busy had a half-decent chance in the same race, given that horse it went on an absolute bog in France last year. So I thought in the Temple Stakes that could run well. In the Sandy Lane, Dragon Symbol's the exciting one. I believe he's been inserted as favourite, become an absolute win machine. Totally different scenario in here, though, against up into deeper waters, if you like. And again, the ground's going to be a big question mark. This is a horse that's been doing it on synthetic tracks and on rattling quick ground at Hamilton last time out. Totally different scenario here. So I'm finding these races a little bit muddling. I do think the Lear Jet it's easy to forget that this horse was a 5 furlong winner at Royal Ascot last year, clearly not devoid of speed. They stepped up to mile by the end of last year. I think coming back to the more of the sprinting type trips will suit him this season on perhaps a wider point. If today isn't the day with the ground going against him, wouldn't be shocked if he rocked up in a big 6 furlong contest this season on fast ground and ran well.
Stephen, just one last point before we move our attention to Sunday and the good cards there. There's also a pretty strong program up at York with the Bronte Cup for the fillies and mares, a nice staying race being sort of the highlight race on Saturday at York. Is there anything in that race that grabs your attention?
I thought Believe in Love would take an awful lot of beating, Shane. Roger Varian, obviously a genius. The market love his horses. When they're strong in the market, they always run well. She's been off for a few months, but she won't mind a bit of cut in the ground. Varian's absolutely flying in the last fortnight. He's had 12 winners from his last 42 runners. Everything that's been backed is nearly winning or going close. She's won 4 from 6 on the turf. She goes with cut in the ground. She looks the clear form choice.
What about you, Ed? Anything in that race?
I'd probably take Stephen on, actually. Joseph O'Brien has one entered in here at York. Mighty Blue is about third in the betting, I believe. You remember this individual ran at the Cheltenham Festival in the Dawn Run Mares Novices, finished third. It was a really good run. Since then, it's gone back on the level. Absolutely hacked up in a listed contest by 7 lengths last time out. That was a really impressive performance at Gorham Park. All the best form comes with substantial give underfoot again. So I'm not going to back her yet, just in case the rain clouds all do move to the northwest and avoid the northeast, if you like. I believe it's good to soft on the Knavesmire at the moment. The ground conditions did turn pretty soft there. I do think Mighty Blue looks to really enjoy coming back onto the level and would go there with every chance.
All right, guys, let's now have a look at Group 1 racing coming our way on Sunday, again at the Curragh in Ireland. And the first of the Group 1s that we'll talk about is the Tattersalls Gold Cup, which is over an extended 10 furlongs, or a mile and a quarter. Armoury for Godolphin, Aidan O'Brien, Broome. We've also got Fiscal Rules in the race. Helvic Dreams there. Japan's been nominated. Mogul's certainly in the race. Pondus has got a nomination as we await the final outcome of the field. Serpentine, Sunchart, Tiger Moth's also been nominated. KM Pepper, very good daughter of Australia. Looking forward to seeing what she can do. And the Outstanding Love, get to see her reappearance. Search for a Song, Thundering Nights, and True Self, who's another one that's also been nominated for that Group 1 race. We might also now just have a quick look at the other Group 1 race before we get a general overview from the guys. And the other Group 1 race on the card is the Irish 1,000 Guineas. Bell Image certainly in the race. Empress Josephine, Fantasy Lady, Fev Rover is another one that's there with Friendly. As we keep scrolling through, Joan of Arc was quite impressive winning last time out. Lovely Esteem, Messidor, Miss Amulet, More Beautiful, No Speak Alexander, pretty gorgeous, highly regarded filly. Sense of Style, Shale, who we're expecting better things from through the preparation, Sweet Gardenia, Zegat, Thinking of You, and Zaffi's Pride, the other one there. All right, Stephen, let's recap on these Group 1 races for the Curragh on Sunday. Of course, we're still waiting at the time of recording this show for the final fields to come together. But what's standing out from your perspective at this stage in the Group 1s?
Well, in the 240, the Tattersalls Gold Cup, I mean, Aidan's got 3/4 of the field. He's got his whole stable entered, really. Heavy Ground for Love. Now, I mean, she's a brilliant performer. 6 from 10 in her career so far. Really impressive, but all of it has been on good ground or faster. She has run once on good to soft and got away with it, but I would be slightly surprised if she ran at all. And in the 1,000 Guineas at 3:15, Shale is another one. I read a jockey interview about Shale, and they're very worried about soft ground there. So again, you have to be doubtful that they'd run. I would imagine Joan of Arc would take an awful lot of beating if that one runs in the 3:15. A tough front runner, needed the run first time out, and then a lot fitter, and they put the money down last time, and really impressive from the front, making all and drawing clear. Now, soft ground is absolutely fine for. She won a 20-runner race at the Curragh last season on really testing ground, so I think everything's ideal for that one. But I suspect, Shane, these are watching races again, and also I would imagine, although we've got loads of decks at the minute, because Aidan has declared so many, these could end up being small field tactical races. So hang fire at the moment.
All right. What about you, Ed?
I would echo a lot of that, to be honest with you. I'm going to be splinters in my backside for the Sunday mainly. I mean, essentially, a lot of eyes will be on the returning Love, of course, who season was curtailed last time out. Whether she wants absolute hot, deep conditions in a real testing battle first time out, is probably against her. But I suppose they're taking the view they've got big targets ahead. They need to get her out at some point. And also, obviously, Serpentine, the Derby winner, I believe, is entered as well. So, yeah, it's a bit of the who's who from Ballydoyle regards to this one. But listening to the kind of bulletins, it pretty much sounds like they're going to try at least to give every opportunity for Love to run, if not more than anything, just to clear the cobwebs away with bigger targets ahead. So, and the Irish 1,000 guineas are really scratching my head with. I'm happy to sit that one out.
All right, guys, let's have a look now at the tips of the week. And we'll start with you, Stephen, as we reflect on last weekend. And, of course, Spycatcher not being able to deliver anything, but Al Arcee, who you were supremely confident about, of course, destroying me in the Aston Park with that dominant performance when I was with Logician. But you certainly are still tracking along quite nicely since we've started keeping score of our tips for Jump To It through the flat season. Who do you like this week?
I've got 3, Shane, that I'm going to be backing, prices permitting. The strongest is probably Liberty Beach in the Temple Stakes at Haydock. I really like John Quinn's filly. She's a really strong traveller, goes on soft ground, run once at Haydock, won at Haydock. That was over 6, but she is a speed ball. She was locking horns with Batash last season. She ended up running a blinder in the Abbey. Anything more than 2-1, I think, is a really fair price with conditions to suit. Earlier on at Haydock in the 225, Frankenstella, another very progressive stayer, I thought was extremely unlucky at York the other weekend, dropped out last, made really smooth headway, and then got her run repeatedly checked just at the wrong time. I think she's ahead of the game, and I think with any luck in running, she'll go really close. And then a wild card, Shane. I know you like a roughie. Is that what you call it?
Well done.
In the 350. We're getting over these language barriers as we get to know each other better. Over at York in the 350, a sprint handicap. Macana of Judy Camacho. Last time at Chester, first time out, first run for 5 months, drawn in the car park. Fluffed the brake, never got involved, but quite eye-catching, I thought, in a race run at a true pace, won by Jabberwocky. Should be fitter for that run. If you watch last season's final run at Musselburgh, that was on really soft ground, and he tanked through it. He had the race won all stages, although he only won narrowly in the end. He was well ahead of his mark on soft ground, so I'm hopeful. I think he's around 14-1. Graham Lee's up, top weight. He'll go really close.
All right, let's recap Stephen's selections once again for the weekend. 3 tips to focus on. Frankenstella currently at around 8-1. The win with Bet365. Mackinac at 16-1. The win with Paddy Power running at York. And, of course, Liberty Beach, who Stephen's given a very good push for, running at Haydock. So 3 selections on Saturday. Stephen's overall account at plus 13.5 units. He's doing very well. All right, Ed, let's focus on you as we reflect on last weekend. You're still ahead of the curve, despite striking out last weekend with Santiago, who did run well, and, of course, good boy Bobby. Let's have a look at your tips for this week, Ed, I should say. Who do you like?
Yeah, I got Tabea in the Height of Fashion Stakes at Goodwood on Friday. This filly goes into, up in grade into much deeper waters here. However, she really won nicely on her comeback at Chepstow, it has to be said. Quickened up, really impressive performance. That was over the 10 furlongs. Yes, it wasn't a particularly strong novice stakes on the face of it. However, the runner-up has since come out and won, so at least the form does look to have some sort of substance to it. And I do think Talbia, around the 11-2 mark, she's unexposed, she's on an upward curve, and I do think she's quite an exciting type going into that contest. All
right, your other selections on the weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. We got Hookham on, I think it's the Tapster Stakes, as it's called, at Goodwood on Saturday. Again, same colours here. Jim Crowley will be on board. This race has actually really cut up since the entry stage. I think there's only the 6 going to post now, and I think Hookham's just a class act. He's also won at Royal Ascot, won the Geoffrey Freer course, ran really well in the Ledger as well. And then on his seasonal reappearance at Sandown, it was just A, he needed the run, and B, 10 furlongs was just on the sharp side for him. To his credit, when he did it the Sandown Hill, he did started to plug on. I think with that run under his belt, back to 1.5 miles, we'll see a totally different horse here. So I think Hookham wins. And then, yeah, you say I'm the forgiving type, Shane. Well, in the Irish 2000 Guineas, I think Battleground is definitely worth a bet at the prices. I made this point going back before the English 2,000 guineas at Newmarket that two things. The horse was absolutely backed as if defeat was out of the question, wasn't he? He was backed into 9-2 favourite on the day at Newmarket and then ran like he had cement in his boots, it has to be said. But they were clearly expecting a lot from him. But again, I voiced my concerns with him in the ground. If you see him in the paddock, he is built like a chaser. He's massive. He's a really heavy-topped individual. The ground was absolutely rustling at Newmarket, and I just wondered whether he didn't act on it at all. If you go back to last season when he won at Royal Ascot in the Chesham, it was it was a bog. And there were other horses in that race going up and down on the spot, and he just glided through the mud and powered through it, looked really happy. I just wonder, with all this rain and the ground going to proper kind of national hunt conditions, soft to heavy ground at the Curragh, wouldn't be at all surprised if he left that performance at Newmarket behind, because they clearly were expecting a big run. I'm just not sure whether he let himself down on those conditions, it has to be said. So he's got plenty of soft ground form in the book and at a good level, and I'd take another chance with Battleground to get back to winning ways. Ryan Moore's on Wembley, which just seems to be the way, but Wayne Lorden's a more than able deputy, and I think Battleground could show much improved form here.
Loyalty's a wonderful trade as we recap on your selection, sticking solid with Battleground there. But Talbea stepping out in the Height of Fashion Stakes, Hookham in the Tapster, and Battleground in the 2,000 guineas. We're still waiting for markets to appear for Hookham, but you can get 11-2 about Talbea and 7-1 for Battleground. They certainly look attractive odds. All right, from my perspective, I had a disaster last week because I went the double, and Logician ran like a cow and got well beaten, while Pier came out and won like Frankel. So I was half right. I'm claiming I was half right. But I was pretty emotional on the day, I can tell you, when Logician was floundering. But this weekend, I'm scouting far and wide to try and get things back on track, and I'm actually starting in Australia. There's a horse who's been one of the best horses in Australia for many, many years, Humidor. He stretched Winks once. He opened up at $51 for the Doomben Cup on Saturday. He's into around 25-1 at the moment with Bet365. I think he'll end up jumping closer to 15, 16-1, and I have him marked as a 10-1 chance. I just think he's huge overs, and he's a great each-way bet. I thought the Learjet, guys, we've spoken about the Learjet a few times through the coverage today. I think he's a very good bet in the Sandy Lane Stakes. I've got a couple of other selections that I'm keen to focus on as we bring the next tips up for the rest of the weekend. Lady in France, if she can bring her best form of last season, I think she's a really good each-way prospect in the Temple Stakes. And Love, I'm praying she handles the wet on Sunday, because if she does, the current market of 6-4, I think, is giveaway odds. She will hack up if she can handle the wet. She's too good. All right, guys, should touch on the weekend ahead. Of course, so many highlights. What are you looking forward to the most, Stephen?
I'm hoping that in the Temple Stakes that Liberty Beach makes a winning return and then heads to Royal Ascot. She's trained by John Quinn in the north. She's their best horse by some distance, and I'm hoping she can really get back on track this season.
Looking forward to it. Good luck to you, Ed. What's your looking forward highlight, hopefully, this weekend?
Yeah, brilliant National Hunt card at Stratford on Saturday night. Right, yeah. What I would say is I'm hoping for big performances from the OBriens, the Mighty Blue, if that runs at York, obviously Battleground for Aidan in the Irish 2000, and then I suppose over here, looking for big time for Jim Crowley. I'd have to be say he's got some big rides this weekend, and Hookham being the main one of those. So kind of spreading here, there, and everywhere really. But it's just there's so much good action going on, so I don't know where to look. It has to be said, but thoroughly looking forward to it.
Can't wait, and hopefully when we're talking this time next week, I'll be back in the positive territory with my tips after last week's blowout. Guys, great work. Good luck this weekend.
Cheers, Shane.
There's Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley with their look back. We'll look forward, I should say, to this coming weekend. But great analysis through last weekend's racing, and also plenty of news about. Well, make sure you head to irishracing.com to get all the latest news, form, tips, opinions for racing in the UK and Ireland. And also head to bettingexpert.com for Stephen Harris's daily tips. So you get a best bet or a nap, as well as his value bet each and every day. And overall, he's been in fantastic form over the past few months. Let's hope it can continue. Hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump to It. We'll see you again next week.